A self-help program without spirituality will only get you so far. Okay, there, boom. I'm going to talk about that in this video. Hi, my name's Tim. This is Selfless Awakening, where I like to ground all of this spiritual stuff. If you like what I'm talking about and you're connecting with me on YouTube, subscribe, click the little notification to stay up to date on my latest stuff. If you're watching this on IGTV, hey, leave a comment. And IGTV only lets the video be 10 minutes. So if you want to watch the full video, if I end up going over 10 minutes, hop over to YouTube, okay? All right, here we go. Self-help will only get you so far if you don't have a spiritual practice involved in it as well. That's my belief. That's something I hold to be true for myself and for people I know. And I came to this idea to do this video in a response to Mark Manson's book, bing, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That book, I was pulled to read the book after I saw Mark Manson on an interview with Tom Bilyeu on Tom Bilyeu's channel Impact Theory. Really great interview, and Mark Manson was talking about how he was talking about values, and which really I like to say beliefs. But he's talking about values, which are the things we think about that we either were programmed early on in our lives to automatically believe to be true, that dictate our decision making, or things maybe we've acquired along the way in our adulthood. But a value is something that you think about, and because you think this way about it or the world, that influences your decisions. Like, if, for instance, if you somewhere along the way as an early kid coming up, you got this idea that, oh, I'm terrible at sports. After, let's say you played kickball and somebody said, ha ha, you're slow, and they picked on you, and then you thought, oh, I'm terrible at sports. That becomes a belief. That becomes something that whether you actually value it or not, it's become one of your values or beliefs or things that you're holding on to in your mind that is affecting your decision making. So how does that affect your decision making? Very logically, let's say the next sporting thing comes up. That voice kicks in your head, that belief, the voice in your head throws the belief at you and says, hey, you're no good at sports. Oh, I'm now good at sports. And then, so you understand, like, that belief, which you hold on to, really, many of these things go unexamined. It's like, actually look at it. Wait, am I bad at sports? Like, well, I don't know. Well, does this person when I was 5 years old telling me that I'm bad at kickball or that I'm slow, really, is that an honest way to truly assess how good someone is at sports? Is this really true? No, of course not. So a lot of these beliefs we hold on to are just bullshit, basically. And that's one thing I have to say, super props to Mark Manson for in a very articulate way, he's presented that a way to look at that, you know, and a way for people that don't normally, maybe wouldn't think to look at themselves. This is a great way in, you know. It's a great way to start probing yourself, because that's a big part of self-betterment and self-help, is honestly looking at yourself. And that would be the overall big note of positive that I would say this book sings, is look at yourself. Look at what's running you. Look at what's underneath the hood. Have the willingness to actually look and take responsibility for what you're doing, who you are. Like, that's kind of the big note I think the book has to say, that, like, it's a positive note. Now, on the other side of it, I'm going to zoom in on a couple other points that I really liked from the book, and then I'm going to talk about some things that I'm not in alignment with. Like, that's not my life experience, and it tethers to this idea of why this book, A Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, is a self-help book. It's not a spiritual book, and because it's a self-help book in this particular way, it's missing a lot of tools that can help someone feel better and be freed of their suffering that he doesn't really get into a lot. He does talk a little bit about Buddhism in the book, but he doesn't really get into, there's some things that I feel he was missing, at least in my experience. But first I want to talk about some of the other cool things with the book. One of the really cool things that he brought up, which I hadn't heard language before, it was actually him referencing Alan Watts when he talked about the law of reversed effort, or the backwards law, I guess is also a way it's called, which is this idea of, if you've ever noticed when you're trying to do a project, how sometimes you try and you try and you try and you try and you don't get too far. And then all of a sudden when you back away and you kind of chill out and let it go, it's like it takes over and it starts happening. It's almost like the less effort you put in sometimes, the more progress something takes. And it's an interesting principle. I've certainly experienced it. Mark Manson does a great job of breaking that concept down and talking about it, because it's definitely a part of, like, learning how to build anything has to do with tapping into this ebb and flow of actually doing things, do things, be productive, get up, write out a list, take care of things, get it done, and also stopping doing that, literally, like sitting back, letting it flow, backing away from a project, focusing on something else, letting it have a little space. Like, there's a lot of magic in learning how to integrate that principle into your existence. I certainly can say it's been a big part of mine, and he lays it out really well in the book. Now, okay, so, and in general, one last thing I'll say, because of the nature of this book, it's very clear, it was very clear to me who he was targeting, like who the marketing team of this book was targeting. It was like, the language, it feels very male driven, there's like boob jokes in there, and like, it's kind of got this like male humor almost to it, and which I think, and also the use, he says fuck so many times in the book, it's crazy. And I don't judge that, because the truth is, I do believe that there are some people out there that are not ready to hear a lot of positive talk, that are really in a low place, that are in like, really dark places. And from such darkness, sometimes it's too far away, the lightness, when someone's too bright, when it's too shiny, it's like, fuck you, like I'm not there. I'm so far away from that much levity in my life that I can't even relate to you. And so the book does a very clever job of, as my girlfriend and I say, there's a little blood in the mouth. And it's like this idea of, sometimes people like a little suffering. Not sometimes, a lot of times people identify with suffering, and they like to complain, and they like to bitch, and they say fuck and fuck this, and it's like, it feels good to just fucking, yeah, like, and I'm not, by the way, I don't always think swearing is a bad thing. I think it can be very exciting and liberating to say fuck, but I'm not going to go down that road. But the idea of this book, it has a tone. It has kind of a little bit of a, I'm not trying to appeal to the light. This is like, it's like a book sometimes it feels like is aimed at, it's sort of snarky, like fuck you world, fuck life, ass, but someone who also is maybe had enough of that energy inside of themselves, and they're looking to start shifting, but they're not ready to full on shift. They're just kind of ready to just start looking at themselves a little bit and saying, wait a minute, maybe I can unfuck myself, which I think, isn't that his next book, I think? Anyway, I'm not sure. But, so I get it, like it's aimed there. The book's not really aimed at me, per se. And I'm okay with that, but the reason I'm interested in this book, and interested in reading books at all right now, is because I feel very intuitively led, call it whatever, spiritually, deep intelligence-wise, whatever. I feel intuitively led to be of service to as many people as I can. And so I'm reading a lot of these books that I feel kind of come across my path, because maybe they've got a kernel of something I can use to be of service to someone else. And so I'm just looking for ways that I can better be of service to people. And I did definitely find some of that in this book. Now, I want to get into a little bit of the things in the book that I'm not in alignment with, okay? He says a couple things that are They just don't work for me, and here's why. And I'll tell you my experience with them and my what I believe, because again, it comes down to beliefs. And once we start this journey of self-examination and what I call spiritual awakening, where we are becoming more and more able to chill out, get to the inside part of ourselves and be able to like chill and let thoughts come and go, let emotions come and go, you know, like awakening is the deepening into that, being that peaceful bliss that we can live inside of in every moment all the time. That feels crazy to think about is possible, but it is. Like this is what awakening is about for me. And this book, it doesn't go that far, and maybe that's a good thing, because maybe the people it's targeting are not ready to even hear the word spirituality yet, which, you know, that word has a lot of weight to it, and that was, you know, one thing that I did feel was interesting in this book was there's a lot of what I'd call bashing of New Age and mindfulness practices. You know, there's a lot of criticism of people who are who kind of only focus on positive things and don't actually look at the truth of who they are, you know. And I have to say that I do believe that there is a vibration like that. There's an energy. There's a group of, there's a thing in the mindfulness community that is, don't look at the bad, only look at the good, don't look at the bad, you know. And I do believe that energy's out there, but I don't believe that that certainly isn't in my experience of really, you know, I continue to expand my study of all of these things. And I have to say that the mindfulness movement, the New Age movement, yes, there is some positive energy focus there, but it's not the exclusive. There's a lot of people who are doing, you know, talking about, you know, honest self-introspective work, you know, like Byron Katie. Like that's her work's incredible on self-awareness practices, and she's very much in this movement of, you know, mindfulness, New Age, you know, that kind of whatever you want, spirituality, whatever you want to call it. So much of this gets caught up in the semantics of language, and that's what our mind does. Our mind will take words and argue over the word, when really the word is just a pointer. This is something Eckhart Tolle says a lot. The word is just a pointer to something that you're trying to get the other person to understand. So we got to stop arguing about words and focus more on what the word is pointing to when we're communicating. And I feel that there are a lot of people out there, you know, that are uncomfortable. They understand that they lose an audience if they say the word spirituality, or they talk about the internal journey too much, you know. And I have to say that's missing out on things, because here's why. A self-help book without spirituality, it will get you to be able to become aware of your thoughts and your emotions, and even to some degree be able to move them around. But there's still an identification with those thoughts and with this egoic structure you have inside yourself, which you've created. Like for me, I'm Tim Welch, I'm a voice teacher, I'm a dad, I'm a, you know, all of these things. This construct, like if you don't have a spiritual practice, you're going to believe that's you. And when the shit hits the fan, it is really painful to believe you are this person who is about to die, or a person who's about to lose their job, or a person who's about to experience a divorce or the loss of a loved one. Like, if you're not able to have the awakening that helps you see, oh shit, I'm not actually, like, if I forgot I was Tim, or I wasn't a dad anymore, or I wasn't a voice teacher anymore, the I that's always here would still be there. So as you start unraveling the truth of this, and that's spiritual shit, like that's spiritual awakening, as soon as you start having these discoveries, you start to realize, whoa, I was thinking so small when I thought I was a person. It's such a limited bandwidth of potential experience you can have as whatever this crazy experience we're having is, and these inhabiting these bodies, and like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, so it's a very limited bandwidth of self-help you can give yourself until you have the awakening that you pop out and truly become in an understanding of yourself as the awareness. Like, you're the witness of all of the shit that comes in your head. You're not the shit that comes in your head. Like, until you have that real breakthrough, or until you practice that, because you can trigger these breakthroughs through practices. Until you've gone there, you're still going to suffer like crazy, no matter how much you look at yourself or not, And that's where the spiritual thing is so important. So that's one part of this whole concept. I kind of went tangenting there, but I still got a couple more things to say. But, we got to add that on. We have to add on that element to it, okay? So, digressed a little bit, now I'm bringing it back. Things I didn't go for in this book. He says happiness is caused by solving problems, and you just want to try to get to having better problems. And although on one level, I do agree with that. The mind loves to solve problems, and that's a great function of the mind. However, I'm a voice teacher, and when I work with students, I noticed early on, I've been doing it for 15 years, and I can say I noticed early on in my teaching that people want to focus on problems. They want to beat themselves up, they want to think that they suck at singing, and they want to focus on all the parts of their singing that they're shitty at, right? And I've noticed I'm using a little more swear words in this video because I'm talking about the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Fuck it, I'll go for it. So when people like to beat themselves up with problems, and what I found is it's more productive in my teaching if I primarily focus on what went well, what they did well. Like, on that run through, you did this part great, you did this part great, that part was great, and then you get them in a place where they're feeling really good about all of the things that are working first. Then from there, then you can look at the spot where it may be the problem, or it's like the crease that needs to be ironed out in the thing you're working on. But you understand, it's all about focus. I get people to focus on what's working. And by primarily focusing on what's working, it automatically shines light on what's not working. Okay? So the problem is going to be focused on because it doesn't match with all the good things that are happening. But it's so easy for the mind to immediately go to problem focus, which is what he's encouraging in this book. And I don't encourage that. I encourage focus on what's working and look at what's not working. But it's all about focus. Because here's the thing, this is one of those spiritual laws out there, or laws of the universe, that is one of the things that a lot of the people that don't want to talk about spirituality, they won't talk about this. They call this too woo-woo. Because partially, I think, because of the way that this concept was presented. And it's the law of attraction. And the law of attraction was originally really became big in the society, in my opinion, through the book, The Secret, the book and the movie, which I have to say is kind of cheesy the way it presented. And I think the presentation turned off a lot of people. It's like, you can get anything you want by buying a steering wheel and holding it, and you can have your car if you just buy the steering wheel cover or whatever, which I don't disagree with the concepts that are taught in the Spirit and The Secret, but it kind of had an energy that rubs people the wrong way. So I think a lot of people threw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and they took the concept of the law of attraction. They're like, it's too woo-woo. Joe Rogan says things are too woo-woo. And a lot of people that talk about the law of attraction, they present themselves in a very new age dressed sort of way, which I have to say, spirituality isn't a way of dressing. It's not a type of my girlfriend wrote a great article on her blog, Rebel Hippie Soul, about that. Like, spirituality isn't the way you look, it's an internal thing. And so it's this idea of like, talking about the law of attraction kind of has this stigma to it. And I want to say the law of attraction in my life, my experimenting with it that I've done, it's no joke real. I mean, and it makes sense on so many levels. The idea is you get more of what you focus on. You get more of what you focus on, and when you focus on something more, you deepen into that thing becoming more and more a part of your human experience. So think about that. If I spend time focusing a lot of my energy on how well my business is working and how much it's growing and how well things are going, and I'm not saying avoiding the reality of things that come up that have to be dealt with, but I'm like primarily focusing on positive energy, that's going to grow. My business will continue to grow more the more of the growth I see in my business. That's just how it works. That's how it's worked for me. I see the growth, I see the growth, I see the growth. Here comes more growth. And let's think about very practically how that could play out. Here's one real logical example, right? So I see people, they come into me and they come in all sorts of states. Sometimes they're depressed, sometimes they're manically, they're frantic, they're all different ways. And it's my job to be there consistently for them in a way that's of service to them, regardless of how I'm feeling inside. It's my job to be in a state where I can be there for them, you know? And so when they come in, they're like, Tim, how are you today? I could say, oh, my back hurts, my jaw's sore. Oh, I'm just so annoyed with Trump, and I just saw the last news conference, and I could go there. I could focus on that. I could also focus on talking about other things. I could talk about growth, talk about how well things are going. Like, hey, business is going so well. Like, we had 3 new students start last week, and we may have also had 3 students leave, but I don't need to focus on that with him in that moment. It's about focus. I can focus on, hey, we had 3 students come last week. And then look at my positive focus. Let's see how that rolls out. Let's see how that could play out very logically, being of service to me in the world. I want to build my business. I want the instructors I work with to have more students. So I tell him we had 3 more new students start last week. What does he think in his mind? He thinks, wow, that's great. They're growing. They're having a lot of success. That's great. And then he's got this idea of, wow, Tim's really doing well with the business. And then he goes out into the community, and then he's talking with someone about his voice lessons, about how much fun we have together. And this person says, oh, that sounds fun. I'd like to take singing. Or I know someone who would like to take singing. Do you think this student would be more likely to recommend our program if he knows that we're growing and knows that we're expanding and knows that there's this positive buzz, this thing happening? Don't you think he's more likely to recommend other people to my program, to our program, if he thinks this is a thing that's coming up, a thing that's exciting? I think so. Or do you think he'd be more likely to recommend someone to the program if anytime he asks me how it's going, I'm like, well, we lost 3 students last week. My back hurts. I'm tired of playing the piano. I just, I don't feel good. I'm kind of tired of teaching, but let's do some singing. Like, do you think that he's more likely to recommend someone to come work with me in that state? Or where I'm focusing on high vibe and positive things, okay? So you don't focus on, by not focusing on your problems too much, by focusing on positive things, you're going to better support your growth. Now, here's where I do believe the mindfulness community can get a little tripped up sometime. Is there are some teachers out there that can at times be easily interpreted as saying that don't think about your problems, just think about being positive and everything will work itself out. And I don't even necessarily think the teachers that we misinterpret as saying that necessarily 100% mean that, but it's just, that's a note that they've been banging on for a long time. And Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, like, I would say that's a note. A lot of times it's like, don't look there, look here. If there's negative over there, look here. Like, focus on what you want. That kind of thing. That doesn't work for me either, for sure. It doesn't work for me to focus exclusively on problems, and it doesn't work for me to focus exclusively on the positive energy stuff, because that's just not the way it works in my life. I need to focus on what's working primarily, and then look at what's not working honestly and tell myself the truth about it. And then my process is I ask my intuitive guidance, higher self, internal awareness self, what can I learn from this thing that's come up that feels like it's causing some resistance in me or whatever. And I ask myself, usually some smart idea comes in my head of something to look at, which this thing is telling me about. I learn from it, and I make peace with it, and then focus my energy, my attention back to positive energy. So that's kind of how I do it. So deal with your problems, look at them, but don't focus on them. They shouldn't be the primary focus. Your growth and expansion and the positive things you're doing should be your primary focus, okay? So that is that. Next thing I want to say. He talks about getting high, that highs are shallow and an unproductive waste of life. I completely disagree with that. I believe you should get as high as you possibly can all the time. Now, it's just a matter of what does getting high mean, okay? Getting high to me means being in a state of being where, or let me say it in a better way, being in a mood where you feel like you just feel great. You feel positive. You don't feel frenetic or like so crazy positive like you feel like, you know, manic, but you feel good. You feel enjoy it. You feel like you could sit still and your mind's not pulling you to your phone, or you just feel peaceful. But you can feel energetic and positive and excited about future and in alignment with things that are making life fun for you. And there are lots of different ways to get high if you don't feel high that are not going to shorten your life, you know. And there are some ways to get high that might knock some years off of your life out there that I'm not even, you know, that I have to say, I don't want to get into talking about doing drugs and not doing drugs and all that stuff, but I will say that there are some things you can do out there that are going to be of service to you sometimes, to, you know, that aren't going to super shorten your life. And then there's some things you can do in the drug world that are going to really shorten time. So you got to play with that stuff very carefully, but I'm not going to go into that right now because there's so many ways to get high that don't involve drugs that why don't we start there? Like, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, singing. You know, I'm a voice teacher. A lot of people come to get high with me every week, and they leave high every time. You know, it's a rush to sing. Dancing, that's been my big thing lately. I'm dancing like a madman all the time. I dance every single day. Comedy, going to comedy, watching, doing fun things, doing cardio, doing yoga, painting, doing anything creative. There's so many ways to get high. And the reason getting high, or the focus of learning about getting high and why it's an okay thing, is because you have to learn what it feels like to feel good. We're so used to not feeling good. I didn't start really focusing on feeling good or understanding the importance of it and how much that affects the way my day's manifesting, the way my life manifests, until I met my girlfriend. And she really, because she focuses on everything she puts in her body, she looks at it and she's like, is this going to make me feel better? Am I going to enjoy this? Like, she's so good. And not just that, but about her decisions. Like, do I really want to do this? And I've definitely learned that from her. And I can say, get high as much as you can, but just be aware of how you're doing it. Like, we're here to feel good, and we all have inside of ourselves the capacity to feel good. And I want to feel good as much as I can. It doesn't mean avoiding feeling bad. You can paradoxically sometimes, as you get into the spiritual journey, feel good while you're feeling bad, which is kind of crazy, I know. But anyway, there we go. That's enough. I'm not going to go any further. I'm already at 28 minutes on this video, and I feel like I could talk more on this topic, but I'm going to stop there and say, just in a summary, great book, read his book, let that book get you so far, and add on spiritual practice. That's my encouragement, okay? So, and what does that mean? Well, watch some more of my videos, look up spiritual teachers, watch some videos of Eckhart Tolle, watch some videos of Abraham Hicks. Matt Kahn is a great teacher. Gabrielle Bernstein, she's great. And many more, okay? Subscribe if you like what I'm talking about. Have a beautiful day. Cheers.